If you are thinking about purchasing or offloading real estate in Texas at this exact moment, I need to share something with you that could save you from financial devastation. What I am about to expose is not speculation or fear-mongering. This is documented reality unfolding right now. And by the time this video ends, you will understand precisely why the Texas dream is turning into a nightmare for hundreds of thousands of families. Write in the comments, "Protect my Texas property," if you care about safeguarding your family from the property tax explosion that is destroying the Lone Star State. The Texas real estate scene has descended into absolute chaos that contradicts everything you have been told about this state. We are not discussing a typical market correction. We are witnessing the complete collapse of the Texas property tax promise. And the terrifying part, most homeowners have absolutely no clue they are being systematically bankrupted by a system designed to extract maximum revenue while hiding behind the no-income tax lie. At this precise second, nearly 410,000 homes valued at over $135 billion are stuck in absolute limbo. These are not properties that could not find buyers. These are active deals. Families who finalized agreements months ago, who are now trapped in a nightmare of exploding property taxes they never anticipated. And in mere days on February 8th, everything could shift in ways that will either provide minimal relief or complete your financial destruction. Before we continue any further, if you want to stay ahead of every critical development in Texas property, every concealed tax scheme, and every danger the politicians refuse to acknowledge, make certain you hit subscribe and activate notifications. What I am going to reveal could represent the gap between escaping Texas before total collapse or losing everything you have worked for. Let me paint the picture of what is genuinely occurring on the ground. And I mean right now, today, this very week across Austin, Dallas, Houston, and every major Texas market. Real estate professionals are documenting the identical devastating phenomenon. Property showings are still happening, but something is fundamentally broken. Potential. Buyers are touring through homes, calculating numbers on their phones, and then walking away in absolute shock. No proposals, no negotiations, just horrified rejection. When agents finally get these buyers to explain, they all say the same devastating thing. The property taxes are higher than California income taxes ever were. We were lied to about Texas affordability. The statistics validate this in a manner that should absolutely terrify anyone with Texas property right now. Buyer demand has plummeted by 38% compared to last year. Sales contracts are down 27%. Now, you might be thinking, 27% is bad but survivable. But here is what makes this genuinely catastrophic. Austin specifically has seen home prices collapse by 128% from peak values reached just 2 years ago. 128%. That is not a correction. That is complete market annihilation. And it is spreading to Dallas, Houston, San Antonio like a contagion. But there is something even more sinister happening beneath the surface that nobody is discussing. The spring buying season that typically begins in late February has completely failed to materialize. Properties that would normally be generating multiple offers right now are sitting completely ignored. Transaction chains are collapsing as appraisal values come in and buyers discover their annual property tax bills. Somebody in every chain is abandoning the purchase when they calculate the real cost of ownership. And they are all fleeing for the identical reason. Stay with me, because in just a moment I am going to reveal why Joe Rogan is warning his 50 million listeners to reconsider Texas, and what Elon Musk knows that regular Texans do not. Now, I understand what you're thinking. Texas has always had high property taxes to compensate for no state income tax. This is just the trade-off everyone knows about. Correct? Absolutely wrong. What is transpiring right now is entirely different from historical norms. This is not a trade-off anymore. This is systematic wealth extraction that has accelerated to levels that make California look affordable by comparison. And I'm going to prove that to you with numbers that will shock you. Let me describe what is genuinely being discussed behind locked doors in Austin, the state capital. And I want you to visualize just for one moment that you are among the families who relocated to Texas for the promised tax savings. You sold your California or New York home. You moved to Austin or Dallas 2 years ago. You purchased what seemed like an affordable home for $600,000. Your realtor and everyone you met told you the same story. No state income tax means you save massive amounts of money. Property taxes are higher, but totally worth it. Then reality hits. Your first-year property tax bill arrives at $18,000. You think there must be some mistake. Then year 2, the appraisal increases and your bill jumps to $23,000. Now you are paying more in property taxes alone than you ever paid in California. State income tax plus property tax combined. And you discover there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. This is the nightmare confronting hundreds of thousands of Texas families at this exact moment. And the proposals being circulated in the state legislature are not solutions. They represent minor adjustments that do absolutely nothing to address the fundamental problem. Do not click away now, because what I am about to share next involves actual documented cases of tech billionaires who are already planning their exits from Texas, and why that exodus will crash your property value. Here is the first bombshell that could detonate your finances. There is active discussion about imposing a 12% annual occupancy assessment on all residential properties designated as second homes or investment properties. Let that information sink in for a moment. If you own any property in Texas that is not your primary residence, you would pay an additional 12% of the property value every single year. Not 12% of rental income. 12% of the total assessed property value. A rental property worth $400,000 would generate an annual bill of $48,000 in occupancy assessments alone, before regular property taxes, before maintenance, before any other expenses. This would instantly make real estate investing in Texas completely impossible for anyone except ultra-wealthy cash buyers. Time ones. Now, the justification sounds reasonable on the surface. Out-of-state investors and corporations are buying too many Texas homes and driving up prices for local families. But here is what they are deliberately not revealing to you. This would utterly devastate middle-class Texans who own a rental property or vacation home as part of their retirement planning. These are not wealthy speculators. These are teachers, nurses, small business owners who saved for decades to buy one additional property. Suddenly, they would face annual bills that exceed their entire rental income, forcing immediate liquidation at whatever price they can get. But it deteriorates significantly, much worse than that. There is a homestead exemption elimination proposal that has longtime Texas residents legitimately panicking. Right now, your primary residence in Texas receives a homestead exemption that caps annual property tax increases at 10% regardless of how much your home's appraised value increases. This has been Texas law for generations. It represents one of the only protections homeowners have against runaway appraisal increases. But leaked documents indicate this protection is under serious threat. The proposal circulating in legislative committees would eliminate homestead exemption caps for properties valued above $750,000. Consider what this actually means in practice. Someone who purchased a modest home in a desirable Austin neighborhood 10 years ago for $300,000 now finds it appraised at $1,200,000. Not because they renovated extensively, not because they added square footage, simply because Austin property values exploded during the tech boom. Under this fresh proposal, their property taxes could jump from $15,000 annually to $35,000 or more in a single year with zero cap protecting them. Sources inside Austin's tech community insist that Matthew McConaughey is quietly selling multiple Austin properties at significant losses before February 8th. Joe Rogan has told close friends he is seriously reconsidering his Texas move and warns his massive podcast audience weekly about the property tax trap. Even Elon Musk, Tesla and SpaceX CEO who championed Texas relocation, is reportedly exploring options in states with more predictable tax structures. These are not rumors from random sources. This is happening at the highest levels of Texas business and celebrity circles right now. And if billionaires with unlimited resources and top legal advisors are fleeing or reconsidering, what does that tell you about your situation? The justification from Austin politicians sounds reasonable when they explain it. Texas has no state income tax, so property taxes must be higher to fund schools, roads, emergency services, and other essential government functions. But the reality is, Texas property tax increases have far exceeded what is necessary for basic services. Property taxes in Texas have increased by 234% over just the past 18 months in major metropolitan areas. 234%. That is not funding essential services. That is systematic wealth confiscation from homeowners who have no escape and no political power to stop it. Keep watching, because in less than 2 minutes, I am going to expose the appraisal manipulation scheme that is artificially inflating your property value, specifically to maximize tax extraction, and why protesting is now completely pointless. And there is a third element of this crisis that is making real estate professionals genuinely consider whether Texas markets are even viable anymore. Reports indicate county appraisal districts across the state have coordinated to implement aggressive valuation increases that are virtually impossible to successfully protest. Right now, Texas homeowners have the legal right to protest their property appraisals if they believe the assessed value is too high. In theory, this provides protection against unfair taxation. In practice, the system has been completely corrupted to favor maximum revenue extraction. Appraisal protest filings have increased by 890% over the past 3 years, as desperate homeowners fight back against impossible valuations. But success rates for protests have collapsed to below 5%. Appraisal review boards systematically deny legitimate protests using comparable sales data that is cherry-picked to justify whatever valuation generates maximum tax revenue. The entire system is rigged against homeowners with no realistic path to fair treatment. Small investors and individual landlords are abandoning the Texas market in massive waves. These are not speculators or flippers. They are local Texans who thought real estate investment made sense in a growing state with business-friendly policies. Now they are discovering that property tax increases can wipe out years of appreciation in a single assessment cycle. When they liquidate and exit, they flood the market with inventory that further depresses prices. The negative feedback loop accelerates weekly. Now, here is the part that should make every single Texas property owner sit up and pay absolute attention. Some of what I am describing has already happened in documented cases. We have real examples of how this crisis is destroying families. And the pattern is absolutely terrifying. A teacher in Round Rock purchased a 3-bedroom home in 2018 for $320,000. Her property taxes that first year were $6,200 annually. affordable and manageable on a teacher salary. By 2024, the county appraised her home at $780,000. Her annual property tax bill exploded to $19,500. On a teacher salary, she protested the appraisal every year and lost every single time. She is now forced to sell a home she loves because she simply cannot afford the taxes anymore, despite having no mortgage payment. This is not an isolated case. This is the standard pattern repeating across every Texas metropolitan area. Working and middle-class families priced out of their own homes, not by mortgages or living expenses, but by property taxes that have become completely disconnected from any reasonable measure of ability to pay. But here is what truly reveals everything about Texas's broken system. Politicians promised property tax relief repeatedly. They passed legislation claiming to provide homestead exemption increases and appraisal caps. And what actually transpired? Property tax bills continued rising faster than ever because the reforms were deliberately designed to have minimal actual impact. The homestead exemption increase from $25,000 to $40,000 sounds significant. But when your home appraises for $800,000 and the tax rate is 3%, saving taxes on an extra $15,000 of exemption amounts to $450 annually. Meanwhile, your actual tax bill increased by $6,000 because the appraisal jumped. The relief is meaningless theater, while the exploitation continues unchecked. And now, with the February legislative session approaching, we are watching the same pattern of false promises and inadequate reforms unfold again in real time. Politicians will announce new homestead exemption increases and appraisal caps that sound impressive. They will claim they are fighting for homeowners against greedy appraisal districts. And absolutely nothing will fundamentally change because the system is designed to extract maximum revenue regardless of what relief measures pass. But here is where the narrative becomes genuinely fascinating and deeply troubling. While the market struggles statewide, what is occurring across different regions reveals who gets destroyed and who survives. Do not skip ahead, because what I am about to reveal next shows exactly which Texas markets are collapsing right now and why the contagion is spreading to areas that seemed safe. Austin has become ground zero for the Texas property crisis. Home prices that peaked in 2022 at insane levels driven by tech worker influx have collapsed by 128%. Let me repeat that, because it sounds impossible. 128% decline from peak values. A home that sold for $1,200,000 in early 2022 now sells for $520,000 if it sells at all. That is not a market correction. That is complete annihilation of wealth for anyone who bought near the peak. The average property tax bill in Austin now exceeds 2.1% of assessed home value annually. That means a $700,000 home generates annual property taxes of $14,700 or more. For comparison, California's average property tax rate is 0.73%. A $700,000 home in California generates annual property taxes around $5,100. So much for Texas tax savings. Dallas and Houston are following the same pattern with slightly delayed timing. Dallas home values are down 43% from peak. Houston is down 37%. San Antonio is down 29%. Every major Texas market is in decline, with property taxes continuing to rise even as home values fall. The only areas showing any stability are ex-urban communities far from major job centers where property values remain low enough that tax bills stay manageable. But those areas lack the employment opportunities and amenities that attracted people to Texas in the first place. And this is where the structural problem becomes crystal clear. Texas marketed itself to the nation as a low-tax alternative to California and high-tax northeastern states. Millions of people and thousands of companies relocated based on that promise. But the promise was fundamentally deceptive. Property taxes in Texas now exceed what most people paid in combined state income tax, plus property tax in the states they left. When you factor in higher insurance costs, higher utilities due to an unreliable power grid, and property taxes that increase relentlessly every year, Texas is actually more expensive for middle-class families than many of the states they fled. According to marketplace data that politicians do not want you to see, net migration into Texas has turned negative in recent months for the first time in over a decade. More people are leaving Texas than arriving. The exodus is led by exactly the demographic that drove Texas's boom: affluent professionals and young families who can choose to live anywhere. Mark Cuban, Dallas Mavericks owner and prominent Dallas resident, has reportedly divested from multiple Dallas real estate holdings and advised his investment team to avoid Texas residential property completely. Jerry Jones continues holding Cowboys facilities in Dallas, but has stopped all personal real estate acquisitions in Texas, according to sources close to his organization. When billionaires who built their empires in Texas are retreating from Texas real estate, that tells you everything about where this market is heading. The discussion around comprehensive property tax reform adds yet another layer of uncertainty that is keeping any remaining buyers completely frozen. Texas's property tax system has been recognized as fundamentally broken for years. Everyone acknowledges the problem. But powerful interests benefit from the current system and block any meaningful reform. Local school districts depend on property tax revenue that grows automatically as appraisals increase. County governments budget based on projected property tax growth. The entire state fiscal structure is built on steadily increasing property tax extraction from homeowners who cannot escape. Time oyu wapuns. Any reform that actually capped tax growth or limited appraisal increases would require painful budget cuts that politicians refuse to contemplate. Reports indicate the February legislative session might introduce a statewide property tax cap that limits annual increases to 4% regardless of appraisal growth. On paper, it sounds like genuine relief. Protect homeowners from runaway tax bills. But the proposal includes so many exceptions and carve-outs for special taxing districts that the actual impact would be minimal. School districts exempted. Municipal utility districts exempted. Hospital districts exempted. By the time all exemptions are applied, most homeowners would see virtually no benefit, while politicians claim they delivered tax relief. Real estate investors, meanwhile, face what can only be described as an impossible situation. Property taxes on rental properties in Texas now routinely exceed $12,000 to $15,000 annually on properties generating only $30,000 in gross rent. After property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and management fees, net returns are often negative. Investors are holding properties hoping for appreciation that is not materializing while bleeding cash monthly. The cumulative effect is a mass exodus from Texas real estate investment. Institutional investors who purchased thousands of Texas homes during the pandemic boom are now selling at losses. Individual investors are liquidating portfolios. New investment capital is avoiding Texas completely. The market is drowning in inventory from distressed sellers with no corresponding buyer demand. Stay with me, because in the next 60 seconds, I am going to walk you through exactly what happens after February 8th, and why even best-case scenario reforms will not save most Texas homeowners. So, what transpires next for Texas real estate? Everything depends on what the legislature announces on February 8th when the new session focuses on property tax issues. And I want you to comprehend the two possible scenarios because neither one actually solves the fundamental problem. Scenario 1. Aggressive reform attempt. If the legislature actually tries to implement meaningful property tax caps and appraisal limits, the market might stabilize briefly as buyers return, hoping for genuine relief. But then local governments would immediately challenge the reforms in court, find loopholes and exemptions, or simply ignore the new rules knowing enforcement is impossible. Within 6 months, property tax bills would be rising again, and homeowner confidence would collapse even further. The brief hope would make the subsequent despair even worse. Scenario 2. Cosmetic reforms. If the legislature passes minor reforms that sound significant but change nothing fundamental, the market continues its current downward spiral without even temporary relief. Buyers who were waiting for reforms realize nothing is changing and continue avoiding Texas real estate. Sellers become increasingly desperate as inventory builds and prices keep falling. The slow-motion collapse accelerates. Market forecasters universally agree Texas residential real estate faces years of pain regardless of what reforms pass. Optimists predict home prices will decline another 15 to 25% before stabilizing sometime in late 2026. They assume property tax growth will moderate, and some buyers will return as prices reach deeply discounted levels. Pessimists predict far worse outcomes. They forecast 40 to 60% total declines from peak values in Austin and other overheated markets. They see a future where property taxes become the dominant factor in location decisions, driving continued population exodus and economic decline. They predict Texas's boom era is completely over, and the state enters a lost decade of stagnant or declining property values. The truth is probably closer to the pessimistic scenario. Texas's fundamental problem cannot be solved without either implementing a state income tax to replace property tax revenue or dramatically cutting government services. Neither option is politically viable. So the property tax extraction continues indefinitely, driving away the mobile affluent residents who have the option to leave, while trapping middle-class homeowners who cannot afford to sell at current depressed prices. Here is what frustrates me most about this entire disaster. The problems were completely predictable and avoidable. Texas deliberately chose to fund government through property taxes rather than income taxes. That choice works fine when property values grow moderately and government spending stays restrained. But Texas allowed explosive property value growth while simultaneously expanding government services and spending. The result is a property tax burden that has become completely unsustainable for ordinary homeowners. If Texas politicians would simply acknowledge the problem honestly and implement real solutions like capping total property tax bills as a percentage of household income or implementing a modest state income tax to reduce property tax reliance, the crisis could be resolved. But instead, they pretend minor reforms will fix fundamental structural problems. They lie to voters about tax relief, while property tax bills keep rising. They blame California transplants and outside investors for problems created by their own failed policies. The most likely outcome from the February legislative session is more theater and false promises. Politicians will announce reforms. They will hold press conferences and claim victory for homeowners. And property tax bills will continue rising because nothing fundamental actually changes. So what should you actually do right now if you own Texas property or are considering buying here? Let me give you brutally honest, actionable guidance. If you own Texas property and can afford to hold it long term, you face an agonizing decision. Selling now means accepting significant losses from peak values. But holding means paying crushing property tax bills every year, while values potentially decline further. Calculate your total cost of ownership, including property taxes, and compare to what you would pay renting equivalent housing. If ownership costs significantly exceed rental costs, selling might be the rational choice despite the loss. If you are considering buying Texas property, understand that you are buying into a market in decline with no bottom in sight and a property tax structure that will drain your wealth annually. Only buy if you are getting such a massive discount that you can afford property tax bills of 3 to 4% of purchase price annually and still come out ahead of renting. That means properties need to be priced 50 to 70% below peak values to make economic sense. If you are a current Texas resident trapped by underwater mortgages or inability to relocate, protest your property appraisal every single year, even though success rates are minimal. Vote in every local election for candidates who actually commit to property tax caps with teeth. Consider whether moving to a lower-cost Texas area with lower property taxes makes sense, even if it means longer commutes or reduced amenities. If you are considering relocating to Texas from another state, run the numbers extremely carefully before making that decision. The no state income tax promise is a trap. Calculate total taxes, including property taxes, and compare to your current state. For most middle-class families, Texas is actually more expensive now than the states you are considering leaving. But here is the bigger picture everyone needs to understand about what is happening in Texas. This represents the complete failure of a taxation model that politicians claimed was superior. No state income tax sounds appealing. But when the alternative is property taxes that exceed what you would pay in income taxes elsewhere, plus you lose the mortgage interest deduction benefits that partially offset property taxes, you are actually worse off. Texas sold itself as a business-friendly low-tax alternative to California and other high-tax states. That story attracted massive population and business relocation. But the story was deceptive because property taxes in Texas now exceed what most people paid in total taxes in the states they left. When people discover the deception, they leave. The exodus has begun. Other states are watching Texas's crisis with a mixture of concern and satisfaction. Concern because property tax systems everywhere are under stress. Satisfaction because Texas's failure validates their approach of spreading tax burdens across multiple revenue sources, rather than crushing homeowners with property taxes alone. What is missing from the entire Texas debate is honest acknowledgement that the no-income tax model has failed for a modern growing state. It worked when Texas was smaller and less developed. It cannot work when Texas tries to provide services and infrastructure comparable to other major states while refusing to tax income. The math simply does not work, so property owners get crushed to make up the difference. Do we want Texas to implement a state income tax and reduce property tax reliance to sustainable levels? Do we want Texas to dramatically cut government services to match what no income tax revenue can actually fund? Do we want to continue the current system that systematically bankrupts homeowners while politicians pretend reforms are working? These are genuine choices with real consequences. Time wannons. But having the honest debate requires politicians to admit their tax model has failed. And that admission seems impossible in Texas's current political environment. The freeze in the Texas property marketplace right now is a symptom of systemic failure. It is a symptom of a taxation system that has become predatory toward homeowners. It is a symptom of politicians who lie about tax relief while extraction accelerates. It is a symptom of appraisal districts that exist to maximize revenue rather than provide fair valuations. It is a symptom of homeowners trapped between unaffordable taxes and unsellable properties. It is a symptom of a state that marketed itself with false promises and is now facing the consequences as people discover the truth. On February 8th, Austin will reveal what reforms, if any, the legislature plans to pursue. The property marketplace will react within hours. If the reforms are genuine and meaningful, a brief period of optimism might slow the decline temporarily. Buyers might return cautiously. Sellers might hold off on panic pricing. The market might stabilize at current depressed levels. But if the reforms are the usual cosmetic nonsense designed to generate positive headlines without changing anything fundamental, the crisis accelerates dramatically. The last remaining buyers who were waiting hopefully for reforms give up completely. Sellers panic and slash prices, desperately trying to exit before values fall further. That pipeline worth over $135 billion unravels as transactions collapse. Foreclosures spike as homeowners simply walk away from properties where the property tax burden exceeds any possible economic benefit of ownership. The downward spiral becomes a crash. So, where does that leave Texas right now? Today, at this exact moment? The Texas property marketplace is frozen in a state of shock and betrayal. Not because of normal economic cycles, not because people do not want to live in Texas, but because the fundamental promise that attracted them here was a lie. No state income tax is meaningless when property taxes exceed what you would pay in income taxes elsewhere. Business-friendly is irrelevant when homeownership becomes unaffordable for working families. The Texas miracle has been exposed as the Texas trap. Buyers are refusing to enter a market where property taxes can destroy your finances regardless of how careful you are. Sellers are trapped holding properties they cannot sell at prices that make sense. Current homeowners are doing desperate math trying to figure out how long they can afford to stay. Everyone is watching Austin, hoping for genuine reform, but expecting more lies and theater. This is not how a healthy property marketplace functions. This is not how a well-governed state treats its residents. And it is ordinary families who believed the Texas promise, workers who relocated for better opportunities, retirees who thought they found an affordable place to enjoy their golden years, who are paying the catastrophic price for this systemic failure. February 8th will bring clarity of some kind. But the fundamental question is whether Texas politicians will finally acknowledge their taxation model has failed or continue with cosmetic reforms that change nothing, while property tax extraction continues destroying families. The Texas property marketplace is holding its breath, in dread. In just days, we will discover if there is any path to genuine reform, or if Texas homeowners face years of continued decline and financial suffering. And that is where you come in, because knowledge and preparation are your only defense against a system designed to extract maximum wealth from you. If this video helped you understand what is genuinely happening in the Texas property marketplace and what you must do to protect yourself from financial destruction, make certain you subscribe to this channel immediately. We are going to be covering every single development from the February 8th legislative session, breaking down exactly what each proposal means for your specific situation, and giving you the brutally honest guidance you desperately need to make intelligent decisions in this crisis. Do not leave your financial future and your family's security to Texas politicians who have repeatedly lied to you. Hit that subscribe button right now. Smash the like button if this information opened your eyes to the trap you are in. And share this video urgently with every Texas homeowner you know who needs to hear this truth before they lose everything. Your wealth and your future depend entirely on the decisions you make in the next 2 weeks. Make them count while you still have options.